everybody, it's Mrs. Pound, and we are starting a new chapter 7.2 on ecosystem dynamics from Purposeful Designs Life Science. We're going to start with section 7.2.1 on food chains and food webs. So our objectives will be to determine the various relationships between producers and consumers in a food web and identify trophic levels in an ecosystem. So first of all, what is a food web? A food web is the network of food chains in an ecosystem. And we can see a small part of that right here, where we have a spider that has captured a fly, and it is going to wrap it in silk and eat that fly. So that is just part of a food web. There are many more interactions that take place, like here. So this is a food web. It's actually many food chains. It starts here with plants, and the arrows always point to in the direction of the energy flow. So the energy goes from the plant to the grasshopper or the rabbit or the mouse or whatever is eating that, okay? And then if the plantain is being eaten by the rabbit, the rabbit is then eaten by the fox. And so that is the direction of the energy flow. And you can see we call it a food web because there are many organisms in an environment. And this kind of is taking on the look of a spider web when all of these arrows cross, because there are many things that eat the berries, and then there are a few things that eat the titmouse here, and so on and so forth. So it becomes very complex, like a spider's web. Now, the ultimate source of all energy that flows through the food web is from the sun. That's why we always start with the plants at the bottom, because they convert the energy from the sun into a food source for the rest of the food web. When we talk about food webs and food chains, we also talk about what is called biomass. And this is the total mass of all the organisms in a given area. So in this area, if this is our area, we would find the mass of all of these animals. We would find the mass of all the plants. We would find the mass of maybe if there's fish in that water. We would find the mass of the things that are underground, like if there are worms or there are snakes on the ground and those types of things. It would be the mass of everything that is living. The most energy and the greatest biomass is at the bottom of the food chain. So that's why I have a picture of plants here. So here is a food pyramid, and at the bottom we have what are called producers. These are the plants. 100% of the energy starts down here. It's the most energy, and it's also the most mass, because as you can see, energy is lost as we go up each level. And so this must have the most energy and the most mass because some is lost at each upper level. The food chain is the food and energy links in a community. An example would be we start with a grass from our previous pyramid, go to a grasshopper, the energy goes to the grasshopper, to a field mouse, to an owl. And notice, just like in the food web, in the food chain, the arrows are always pointing in the direction the energy is flowing, in the direction it is going. A trophic level is a group of organisms that share the same position in a food chain. So let's take a look at that. We have in our food chain producers. These are the organisms that use photosynthesis to make their own food. So these are our plants, and that is the first trophic level. Above the producers are consumers, and these are organisms that eat other organisms. And there are many trophic levels of consumers, as we are going to see. In our food chain, we have what are called herbivores. These are animals that eat plants. They're also known as primary consumers. So here they are in our food pyramid. They're just up above the producers eating them, and they are our primary consumers. Remember, these are the herbivores. Then above them are the secondary consumers. This is an animal that eats herbivores, also known as a primary carnivore. So this field mouse might eat the grasshopper. And a carnivore is an animal that eats other animals. So here we have our secondary consumer, we have our field mouse, and it is eating the grasshopper. And remember, this is a carnivore. There's also a tertiary consumer. This is an animal that eats primary carnivores, also known as a secondary carnivore. So if we look at it here, here is our tertiary consumer. It is eating our primary carnivore, so it is a secondary carnivore. So when we're talking about these things, primary is first, secondary second, tertiary means third. It's at the third level. And then at the very top is the top carnivore. These are animals that have no predators when they're healthy adults, like this barn owl. It is a tertiary consumer and it has no predators. Now, also important in our food pyramid are the detritivores. These are organisms that feed on dead matter and they are found at all trophic levels. That's why we have our detritivores here. And we have an arrow leading to every level because they will consume dead matter at all levels. Now, these include scavengers, and these are animals that feed on bodies of dead animals. And here I have a vulture, and it is a scavenger. Also, decomposers, organisms that get their energy by breaking down the remains of dead organisms or animal waste, things like fungus and bacteria. Without them, the world would fill up with dead material. So they are super important, or we would have a lot of dead material laying around, and materials would not be recycled in the environment. Now, finally, as you can see, everything has what we call a niche. This is an organism's unique role in its environment. In a food web, everything has its own unique niche, like this beaver here. And it has something that it feeds on. It has something usually that feeds on it. And it, like this beaver, can also alter its environment somehow. So those are the things that make up an organism's niche. So our objectives today were to determine the various relationships between producers and consumers in a food web and identify trophic levels in an ecosystem. Don't forget your 5 questions in your notes and keep watching this video to answer the questions at the end.